She used to look at you without flinching. Do you remember that? In childhood, her eyes were full of curiosity, laughter, even mischief, the way siblings are supposed to see each other. But something shifted, slowly at first, then all at once. Now, every time you enter the room, her gaze drifts like smoke, never settling, never meeting yours. It's subtle to others, but you feel it. That cold flicker of avoidance, the tightness in her jaw, the small tremor in her voice when she says your name. And maybe you've convinced yourself it's nothing, just tension, just distance. But heaven is whispering the truth now. There's a reason she can't look you in the eyes. And it's not about what you've done, it's about who you are. Because your eyes carry something holy, something she can't explain and can't deny. The moment you stepped fully into your calling, a divine presence followed, not loud, not theatrical, but undeniable. You didn't need to announce your elevation. God marked you silently, and her spirit felt it before even you knew it was happening. That's why it haunts her, not because you changed, but because something eternal inside you awakened. And every time she looks at you, she sees it. She sees the prophecy. She sees the difference. She sees the truth that she's tried to bury, and that truth burns. See, God will often show others who you are before He reveals it to you. He'll allow them to glimpse the glow before you even recognize it. That's why some people pull away. That's why the room gets quiet when you enter. Your light doesn't need volume. It speaks through presence. And for your sister, that presence became unbearable. Not because she hated you, but because her heart didn't know how to handle being near something she couldn't compete with. You were chosen. And somewhere deep inside, she felt it. So her eyes began to wander. Not by accident, but by spiritual design. Because the truth is, the more aligned you became with heaven, the more convicted she became by what she had not yet surrendered. The jealousy she tried to disguise as coldness, the comparison she masked with distance, the bitterness she wrapped in sarcasm, it all stemmed from a single moment. A moment when her eyes met yours, and something in her spirit knew. God had His hand on you, and she couldn't unsee it. You've been wondering why the air feels tense, why her laughter sounds rehearsed, why her silence feels so loud. It's not your imagination, it's your anointing. And the look she avoids, that's not rejection, that's revelation. Her eyes can't lie. They saw the crown before you did. And now, every time she dares to look again, she's reminded of what's been placed on your life and what can no longer be ignored. This is only the beginning. Chosen one, what's hidden is coming to light. You were raised in the same house, shared the same meals, laughed at the same jokes, even cried in the same rooms. You knew her moods before she spoke them. You covered for each other's secrets. She used to be your closest confidant, your first friend, the one who understood the storm inside you without needing explanation. But now, you barely recognize the energy between you. She's in the same room, but miles away. Her presence feels like a ghost of the girl you grew up with. And you've tried to make sense of it, haven't you? Tried to fix it. Apologize for things you didn't even do. Played small just to keep the peace. But it never works. Because the distance isn't physical, it's spiritual. What you're feeling is divine displacement. God has begun to elevate you, and with that elevation comes separation. It's not punishment, it's protection. Because there are people in your life, even family, who can't go with you where God is taking you. And though it hurts, though it breaks your heart to admit it, your sister is becoming one of them. You didn't change to outgrow her. You changed because heaven required it. Your soul evolved. Your purpose deepened. And in that shift, something between you cracked. Not by your will, but by God's. People talk about betrayal from enemies, but few talk about the silent betrayal of someone you love pulling away. Not with anger, but with absence. It's a different kind of heartbreak, and yet it's often the price of favor. Joseph felt it when his brothers couldn't recognize the dreamer inside him. David felt it when his older brothers mocked his boldness on the battlefield. Even Jesus faced it when his own family doubted his calling. So why are you surprised, chosen one? Heaven has always marked those who walk through life with misunderstood light. Your sister sees you, but not with her eyes. Her spirit feels your alignment, your purity, your anointing, and it offends the parts of her she hasn't healed. The jealousy she carries isn't about what you've done. It's about what she hasn't become. And that unspoken grief has twisted into resentment. So now she keeps her distance. She avoids the topics that matter. She mocks the things that move you. And slowly, without saying a word, she's turned herself into a stranger in your story. But don't mistake distance for defeat. God is not removing her to punish you. He's doing it to preserve your mission. Some people are not meant to understand the frequency you carry. They weren't designed to interpret your vision, only to witness it. And even if it breaks your heart, even if you miss who she used to be, you must not slow down to make her comfortable. Because the calling on your life is greater than the connection you're trying to salvage. Sometimes, the one who once walked with you must now watch you from afar. And that's okay. God sees. She didn't hate your joy. She feared it. Because joy that comes from God isn't loud. It's loud in the spirit. And when you walked into the room carrying that light, that frequency, that unexplainable peace that only comes from alignment, something in her began to tremble. Not visibly, but internally. In the unseen places where pride hides, where comparison festers. Your glow wasn't just a change in you. It was a confrontation in her. And somewhere along the way, she decided she had two choices: to rise with you or to silence what you carried. She chose the second, not with harsh words, not always, but with small jabs, with backhanded comments, with laughter that lingered a little too long after you spoke truth, with stories retold in a way that made you the villain, not because you were, but because it soothed the ache in her spirit. You see, your presence reminded her of who she could have been, who she still could be. But the cost of becoming is high, and some people would rather control the narrative than change their lives. So she tried to mute your spirit with shame, with sarcasm, with silence. What she didn't realize is that what's from God can't be shut down by family tension. Your spirit was born of fire, tested, refined, and baptized in isolation. You've paid for your light in nights of weeping, in seasons of feeling misunderstood, in valleys where you thought even God had forgotten you. But he hadn't. He was hiding you, molding you, separating you not because you were broken, but because you were sacred. And when you emerged, when you began to shine with that quiet knowing, that God-backed confidence, it terrified the demons she never confronted. Let's tell the truth now. She didn't really want to silence you. She wanted to silence the part of herself that felt convicted in your presence. That's why the distance grew. That's why she avoids your victories, skips your posts, deflects when you share your revelations. It's not rejection, it's resistance. Her soul is wrestling with a war she hasn't named, and the more you rise, the louder that war becomes. You are not her enemy, but the spirit in her doesn't know that, because the spirit in her remembers the moment you were chosen, even if her mind doesn't. And yet, even now, God is still working. He sees her pain. He hears the insecurity she can't speak. He knows the tears she cried behind closed doors when she realized she could no longer relate to you, only watch you. That ache, too, has a purpose, because one day, the very spirit she tried to silence will be the one that sets her free. And it will be your light, steady, unshaken, and still full of love, that leads her back, not through force, but through grace. It wasn't a grand revelation, not thunder from the sky, not a sermon or a spotlight. It was subtle, quiet even, a shift in how you carried yourself, the way you walked into the room without shrinking, the way your voice stopped apologizing, the way your peace held steady even when chaos tried to press in. That's when it happened. That's when she saw it, not just with her eyes, but with something deeper, a knowing, a recognition. And in that moment, something ancient in her spirit recoiled, not in hatred, but in fear, because the glow you carried wasn't man-made, it wasn't performance, it was proof. That light wasn't earned by applause or praise, it was forged in silence, in heartbreak, in obedience to a God who called you out when no one else clapped. And she knew it. She felt it. The light wasn't new, it was just uncovered. And what terrified her most was the realization that she could no longer pretend not to see it. Because once heaven reveals someone's mantle, you can't unsee it. And for her, that moment came without warning. One look, one interaction, one simple sentence you spoke, and suddenly she knew you had changed, or rather, you had awakened. Jealousy isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind smiles. Sometimes it sounds like passive support. But inside, there's a tremble, a quiet storm of, why not me? And when did they become that? That storm started the moment your glow walked into the same room she was still hiding in. And though she couldn't say it out loud, her silence screamed it. She saw your light, and it shook her foundation. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence demanded she face everything she wasn't ready to become. The truth? Your light didn't make her feel small. It reminded her she was living below her potential, and that kind of mirror is hard to look into, especially when it's held by someone who used to be equal. That's the wound people don't talk about, when someone you once laughed beside becomes someone you now feel convicted around. And it's even harder when it's family, because the comparison feels closer, the difference feels heavier, and the silence becomes louder. But heaven saw that moment, the moment she recognized your light, and heaven did not judge her for it. Heaven wept for her, because what she didn't realize was that the light in you wasn't meant to threaten her, it was meant to lead her. God placed you in that family not just to break generational cycles, but to guide others out. And your sister, for all her distance, is still part of that assignment. Whether she knows it or not, her deliverance is tied to the light she first saw that day, the one she hasn't looked into since. You kept wondering why the distance grew, why the phone calls slowed, why the smiles turned stale and the warmth turned cold. You kept blaming yourself. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? You even tried dimming your light just to bring her closer again. But no matter how much you bent, the gap only widened. And now heaven is revealing the truth. It wasn't rejection, it was rescue. It wasn't her walking away, it was God pulling you apart. Because if he hadn't, you would have sacrificed your calling trying to keep a connection that could no longer carry your frequency. Separation hurts, especially when it comes from someone who once knew your whole heart. But not every bond is meant to survive your awakening. Some connections were built for your former self, not your future self. And God, in his mercy, didn't let you stay entangled with a soul who would have poisoned your purpose, not out of malice, but out of unhealed jealousy. He heard the things you didn't, saw the eye rolls when you weren't looking, felt the shift in her spirit before you ever noticed her silence. And in love, he said, "Enough, it's time to move." See, you didn't just grow, you outgrew. And that terrified her, because deep down, she thought she'd always be a step ahead, that no matter how much you shined, she'd always hold the upper hand, in wisdom, in favor, in influence. But when God marked you, it exposed the illusion. And instead of celebrating your calling, she started resenting your growth. So heaven stepped in, not to punish her, but to protect you. because God knew that if you stayed too close, you would shrink just to be loved. You must understand, God isn't cruel. He knows how much you meant to you. He saw every prayer you prayed to fix it, every tear you wiped in private, every moment you held your tongue just to keep the peace. But he also saw what was at stake, your purpose, your purity, your assignment. And when that assignment began to activate, heaven had no choice but to separate what could not walk with you into destiny, because oil and envy can't mix. You can't carry the mantle and the weight of someone else's insecurity at the same time. So don't curse the separation. Honor it. It was God's mercy, His intervention, His way of saying, you've gone far enough together. Now I need to take you further, alone. And even if it feels like loss, it's not. It's positioning. Because what she couldn't celebrate, heaven will compensate. You didn't lose her. You gained clarity. And in that clarity, you'll find the peace to keep going, not in bitterness, but in purpose. You were separated to be preserved. It didn't start when you got your breakthrough. It didn't start when your name was finally honored, or when people began to recognize the glow God placed on your life. No, the seed of envy was planted long before all that, before the spotlight, before the separation, before you even knew who you were becoming. It started in the silence, in childhood moments when you didn't realize heaven had already marked you, when favor followed you without effort, when your presence pulled attention without trying. And even then, she noticed. She smiled through it, but her spirit flinched, because even before you stepped into your anointing, something about you carried ease, and for her, ease felt like threat. The world praised her first, maybe for beauty or brilliance or boldness. She wore the crown of being the one for a long time. And you didn't compete. You didn't need to. You were just you. Quiet, observant, gentle. But somehow, even in your softness, you drew things she had to fight for. Opportunities, affection, favor. And while she never said it out loud, a silent question began to take root in her. Why you? Why not me? That's when the seed was planted. Small, almost invisible, but deadly. Envy doesn't need a scandal. It only needs a comparison. And what started as admiration twisted into silent rivalry, not because you flaunted your gifts, but because your existence reminded her of what she couldn't control. You weren't trying to shine, you just did. And the more effortlessly you bloomed, the more her heart began to harden. It wasn't about what you had. It was about how heaven moved around you, how doors opened, how people listened, how even your mistakes turned into wisdom. And deep down, she resented the grace that followed you like shadow, but no one saw it, because she hid it well. She became the supportive sister, the one who smiled at your milestones, clapped at your progress, all while secretly shrinking inside. It wasn't always malice. Sometimes it was sadness. Sometimes it was that aching sense of being unseen next to someone who didn't even ask for the spotlight. And you were blind to it all. You loved her. You looked up to her. You never imagined the war she was fighting against you while still standing next to you. Yet God saw it. Every glance, every unspoken grudge, every celebration she couldn't fully give. And in His mercy, He began separating the soil, because if that seed stayed rooted near your purpose, it would choke the very thing you were called to birth. So He's revealing it now, not to shame her, but to free you. Because understanding doesn't excuse her behavior, but it does give you peace. Peace in knowing this battle didn't begin with your victory. It began with your existence. And still, chosen one, you were called anyway. You thought it would be beautiful to rise together. Two siblings, side by side, walking in favor, sharing dreams, praying the same prayers. You imagined her standing next to you when the door opened, imagined her clapping the loudest when your name was called. But the truth you're just beginning to grasp is this: the blessing placed on your life was never designed for both of you. It was personal, specific, tailored to your soul. And though you tried to invite her into the promise, heaven never assigned her to carry what was destined for you alone. Some mantles are non-transferable. You thought love meant including her. You believed loyalty meant dragging her into places she hadn't prepared for. But God doesn't bless based on who's standing near you. He blesses based on obedience, alignment, surrender. And while you were bending, breaking, and rebuilding in the quiet, she was watching, not growing, not submitting, not stretching. And when the blessing finally arrived, she wasn't ready for it. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she hadn't paid the price. And heaven doesn't release inheritance to those who haven't walked through the fire. It's not pride to acknowledge this. It's protection, because your blessing is not just a gift, it's a responsibility, and not everyone can steward it. That's why things broke when you tried to carry her with you. That's why the bond frayed when you tried to include her in what God was only giving you. It's not that God doesn't love her. It's that this assignment wasn't hers to begin with. You were the one called to disrupt cycles. You were the one chosen to break bloodline patterns. You were the one who said yes when no one else in your family would. And the moment she sensed that, even subconsciously, her heart turned. Because it's hard to watch someone walk into a promise you didn't fight for. Hard to see someone hold a glory you thought would one day be shared. But favor is never about fairness, it's about function. And your function was different from hers. Your soul was tuned to a frequency that hers couldn't interpret. And now, God is confirming what you've always felt but never had words for. The blessing on your life isn't collective, it's consecrated. That's why her presence began to disrupt your peace. That's why conversations turned sharp, and moments that should have been joyful were filled with tension. She couldn't celebrate you because part of her still believed that what you had should have been hers too. But heaven makes no mistakes. Your portion was always meant for you. It fits your hands. It flows through your spirit. And no matter how much you love her, no matter how much you wanted her beside you, this blessing was never meant to be divided. It was meant to be witnessed. And now, she's watching. There's a weight to elevation that no one talks about. It's not just about rising, it's about who can't watch you rise. And sometimes, the ones who were closest to your roots can't stomach the view from your wings. That's what's happening now. She used to look you in the eyes without blinking. But since the shift, since the glow, since the unmistakable favor began following you into every room, her gaze can't hold yours. Not for long. Because looking at you now forces her to confront the reality that you're no longer who you were. And she hasn't moved. Your elevation became her interruption, not of your doing, but by divine collision. You didn't climb on her back or take what was hers. You simply followed God, and He lifted you. But that lift created distance, spiritual altitude. And at this height, the air is thinner, the conversations are clearer, the distractions are fewer, and not everyone can breathe where you now reside. You didn't leave her behind. You just rose above what she refused to outgrow. And now, every time your eyes meet hers, they carry a silent question. Why didn't you come too? She doesn't hate you. She resents the reflection. Because your life, your choices, your favor, they've become a mirror. And not everyone's ready to see themselves through the eyes of what could have been. That's why she avoids your gaze, not because of arrogance, but because of shame. Deep down, her spirit knows you carry something divine, something authentic, something holy, and standing in front of that level of alignment makes her feel exposed. Your peace convicts her chaos. Your purpose exposes her complacency. Your presence feels like prophecy. So she looks away, quickly, uncomfortably, as if eye contact might burn, and in a way, it does. Because the fire in your eyes isn't anger, it's revelation. It's the fire of someone who has walked through the valley, lost themselves, found God, and came back shining. That kind of fire doesn't demand attention, it commands it. And for someone still trying to live in lukewarm places, it's too much, it's too bright, it's too real. That's why her eyes drop. That's why her tone shifts. That's why the warmth turned to ice the day you stopped shrinking. But here's the truth. Chosen one, you're not responsible for who can or can't handle your growth. Your only assignment was to obey. And you did. You trusted God, even when it hurt. You surrendered, even when it cost you. And this elevation, this realm of clarity, strength, and authority is the reward. Her discomfort is not your burden. You were not anointed to remain palatable to the people who remember your past. You were called to rise, and rising will always reveal who's allergic to your presence. Her eyes turned not because you changed, but because you fulfilled what she feared you would become. Before you ever saw it, she saw it, not in full, not clearly, but in flashes, subtle moments when your eyes lit up with a wisdom beyond your years, or when you spoke with a fire that didn't match your surroundings. She saw the glow before you did, felt the shift before you noticed it. There was something different about you, and she knew it, not because you told her, but because God showed her. Long before you understood the weight of your calling, heaven gave her a glimpse, and in that glimpse, something in her spirit panicked. Not all revelation leads to worship. Sometimes it leads to fear. And when God showed her who you really are, not just her sibling, but his chosen, it wasn't awe she felt. It was threat. Not because she didn't love you, but because she hadn't yet come to terms with who she was without being the brightest in the room. You were never trying to outshine her, but your existence, your alignment, your destiny, it pulled something ancient out of the shadows. That glimpse became a wound, and the more your calling unfolded, the more she began to unravel. Heaven doesn't ask permission to reveal greatness, it simply does. And when your spirit began to awaken, when your voice carried authority, when your presence shifted atmospheres, when your peace became contagious, she could no longer pretend not to see it. That's what terrified her, because God didn't wait for you to explain yourself. He announced you in the spirit, quietly, powerfully, and she felt the tremor, the kind that makes people reevaluate everything they thought they knew about who's meant to lead and who's meant to follow. This is the wound no one talks about, the pain of realizing someone else was born to do what you thought you would one day do. She believed her time was coming, but then God revealed you. And that revelation didn't align with her narrative. She had built her identity on being the strong one, the admired one, the center of gravity. But suddenly, the gravity shifted, and you, the quiet one, the misunderstood one, the overlooked one, became the axis heaven was spinning. And yet, God wasn't being cruel. He showed her early so she could prepare. He whispered the truth to her spirit so she'd have time to deal with the tension. But instead of healing, she hid it. Instead of rising with you, she retreated. Not because you did anything wrong, but because seeing your purpose too soon felt like watching a sunrise while still sitting in darkness. She wasn't ready for what he showed her, and now she runs from the light that confirms it was never a dream. It was divine. You've been confused by her distance, but now you know. It's not you she avoids. It's the vision of you God revealed long ago, and it's still shining. This isn't ordinary jealousy. It doesn't wear the usual disguise of envy over beauty, talent, or success. This is something ancient, something spiritual, something prophetic. The jealousy she carries didn't start with your accomplishments. It started with your assignment, because even if she never said it, Even if her smile remained intact, something in her soul recognized early on. You were born with something she wasn't given. Not better, not higher, just different. And that difference over time became unbearable for her spirit to be near. Prophetic jealousy is different than petty jealousy. Petty jealousy is loud. It competes. It boasts. But prophetic jealousy is silent. It lurks in the background of your shared memories, hiding behind congratulations and disguised as concern. It doesn't need to sabotage you. It just needs to distance itself from you so it doesn't feel the sting of comparison every time your name is spoken. That's what she's been carrying. A prophetic awareness that you are marked for something she can't imitate, replicate, or inherit, no matter how hard she tries. And it's not that she doesn't have purpose. She does. But your presence reminds her of the purpose she abandoned. You represent the version of herself she never became. The boldness she buried. The calling she ignored. The obedience she postponed. You were the yes she never gave. And every time you move forward in faith, every time you glow without explanation, every time God confirms what she already sensed, that jealousy deepens, not out of hatred, but out of heartbreak. Her resentment is rooted in regret. She wanted to be the one. Maybe not consciously, maybe she never spoke it aloud, but deep in her spirit, she believed she would be the one God used to shift the family, break the cycles, change the story. And when He chose you, the quiet one, the underestimated one, the one no one saw coming, her identity began to fracture. Because how do you reconcile love for someone whose very existence feels like the fulfillment of your missed opportunity? That's what prophetic jealousy does. It doesn't just make her uncomfortable with your success, it makes her uncomfortable with her own silence, her own disobedience, her own delay. She's not angry at your calling, she's angry that she recognized it first and still didn't protect it. She saw the seed and thought she could ignore it, but now it's blooming in full view, and she can't unsee what she failed to water. But even now, God is merciful. He's not exposing her to shame her. He's exposing her to invite her, to bring healing, to redeem the fracture. And maybe, one day, that jealousy will turn to repentance. Maybe one day her spirit will lay it down. But until then, chosen one, you must understand, this jealousy isn't about who you are on the outside. It's about what you carry in the spirit. And that's what makes her look away. There was a moment she's never spoken about. A moment even she doesn't fully understand. One she brushed off as imagination, dismissed as a passing thought. But it wasn't fiction. It was revelation. Because long before the distance showed up in her voice, in her posture, in the way her presence began to fade from your life, there was a dream, a vivid one, not just images, but feeling. Fragments of heaven sent to her in the stillness of night. In that dream, she saw you, not as you were, but as you would be. Crowned, elevated, unshaken, walking in divine authority. And for the first time, her spirit trembled in a way it never had before. God didn't send that dream to torment her. He sent it to prepare her, to show her what was coming, to extend grace so she wouldn't be caught off guard by the weight of your calling. But instead of receiving it with wonder, she woke up with fear. The image of you radiant, leading, commanding atmospheres with peace and wisdom, it didn't inspire her. It offended her, because deep down, it shattered the unspoken belief that she would always be the strong one, that she would be the one the family turned to, that she would carry the mantle. But in that dream, she wasn't in the center. You were. That was the night something shifted. You didn't notice it right away, but the warmth in her voice cooled. Her support became quieter. Her laughter felt less familiar. That dream lodged itself in her heart like a splinter, not because she didn't want you to rise, but because she didn't know how to process a future where your light outshined the roles she had always assigned herself. And so began the rift, not a loud break, not an argument, but a spiritual fracture, born in a moment of divine insight that her soul couldn't accept. She's never told anyone, probably never will, but that dream follows her. Sometimes in flashes when she sees your name praised, sometimes when others compliment your growth or mention how your presence feels different now. It replays in quiet moments when she tries to make peace with how fast you've changed, how suddenly you've stepped into a realm she hasn't touched. And though she acts unbothered, the dream still speaks, because heaven's visions never fade. They mark you. And you were never meant to know what she saw, but God is revealing it now to set you free. Free from guilt, free from confusion, free from the ache of wondering why she changed. She didn't just pull away because you rose, she pulled away because God showed her you would rise, and she wasn't ready. You didn't cause the rift, the dream did, and the dream was real. You always thought the real battles would come from the outside, critics, enemies, strangers who misunderstood your calling. But what do you do when the resistance comes from someone who shares your blood? When the battlefield is your childhood home, and the silence at the dinner table carries more weight than 1,000 insults from the world? No one prepared you for this. No sermon warned you that the first to war against your destiny might be the ones who once braided your hair, wiped your tears, or sat beside you on the edge of your bed when you were afraid of the dark. But this is what God is showing you now. Family doesn't always mean alignment. Spiritual warfare doesn't always look like demons and darkness. Sometimes it shows up in passive aggression, in dismissed achievements, in the quiet ache of being unseen in rooms you should have been celebrated in. And often, it starts with the people closest to you, like Cain and Abel, like Joseph and his brothers, like David and his own blood. Scripture doesn't hide it. The greatest threats to chosen ones rarely come from the outside first. They come from within, because proximity breeds expectation. And when God lifts one while the other remains still, jealousy finds a foothold and calls it love. Your sister wasn't the villain. She was the unhealed witness to your becoming. She saw your bloom and believed it meant something was wrong with her soil. Instead of asking for help, she watched in silence. And that silence hardened, until one day her heart couldn't celebrate you without grieving herself. And so she pulled back, not to protect you, but to protect the narrative she had written for herself. One where she would always be first. One where your glow would always reflect hers, not surpass it. And you kept trying to fix it, thinking maybe if you just softened your words, shortened your testimony, or dimmed your fire, things would go back to how they were. But they never did, because once God begins to reveal you, no amount of shrinking can reverse the announcement. You can't uncarry the oil, you can't unsee the crown, and trying to downplay it only delays your obedience. That's why the pain kept growing, not just because of her distance, but because of your silence in the face of divine truth. So now you stand in the revelation that few dare to speak aloud. Family can be your first battlefield, and not because they hate you, but because they don't understand how to love someone who has become everything they were too afraid to pursue. This is not punishment, it's prophetic pattern. And like Joseph, like David, like Jesus, you're not just called to carry the anointing, you're called to carry it even when it costs you the comfort of home. You were always there, right in front of her, laughing at the same jokes, sitting at the same table, living under the same roof. But she never saw this version of you coming. Not the one with authority in your voice, not the one with clarity in your steps, not the one carrying a mantle that shifted the atmosphere when you walked into a room. And now you understand why. God hid you, not just from the world, but even from the ones closest to you. Your sister knew the surface, but heaven was guarding the sacred. The real you was veiled, protected, preserved, because had she seen the fullness of your calling too early, her jealousy would have tried to kill what heaven was still cultivating. Sometimes God hides his chosen ones in plain sight. Joseph wasn't sent to the palace first, he was planted in a pit. David wasn't introduced as king, he was left in the field with sheep. Even Jesus walked among his family for years before his voice shifted water into wine. Why? Because heaven knows timing, heaven knows hearts, heaven knows what the people around you can't handle. And your sister, she loved you until the glow started to rise, until the weight in your words became too much, until the presence on you felt like pressure on her spirit. You were the quiet one, the overlooked one, the safe one. She never saw you as a threat until your obedience began to bloom, until your hiddenness gave way to revelation. That's when everything changed, because once God began to unveil you, her spirit couldn't make peace with the person emerging from the shadows. You were no longer little sibling. You were no longer the one she thought would always stay a few steps behind. You had been hidden, yes, but not buried. You were planted, and now you're rising, and she doesn't know how to handle it, not because you've become arrogant, but because she's still trying to reconcile the version of you she knew with the version God is revealing. That internal dissonance is where the coldness lives. That's why her support feels thin, her gaze inconsistent, her compliments laced with hesitation. She's still looking for the version of you God has already moved beyond. And the more you step into the light, the more she grieves the comfort of your hiddenness, not for your sake, but for hers. But make no mistake, God knew what he was doing. He hid you in plain sight so no one could touch the roots of what he was growing, so that when the fruit came, no one could say they watered it. No one could claim it, not even her. Your unveiling wasn't just divine, it was strategic, because the very ones who underestimated you are now forced to witness the truth. You were never small, you were just shielded. Before the world knew your name, she did. Before your voice carried weight, before your eyes held wisdom, before the atmosphere shifted when you entered a room, she already knew. She knew it in moments she couldn't explain, in your quiet resilience, in the way life seemed to protect you, in the way heaven seemed to whisper your name even when no one else was listening. She was the first witness to the frequency in your presence, the first to sense that you carried something divine. And because she knew it before anyone else, she also became the first to feel the threat of what that meant. There's a pain that comes with proximity to greatness, especially when you thought it would be yours. When you grow up alongside someone marked for something holy, it either inspires you or exposes you. And for her, it did both. She admired you, she defended you, but she also wrestled with the realization that while you both shared the same environment, your spirits were not the same. You carried revelation, she carried responsibility. You moved with grace, she moved with pressure. And the gap between who you were becoming and who she believed she had to be grew wider with every passing season. She didn't resent your calling at first, but she did notice the signs, the way others would listen when you spoke, even before you had confidence, the way you found peace in solitude while she chased approval, the way you radiated without trying, while she worked hard just to be seen. And though she never voiced it, deep down she was haunted by one simple truth. You didn't ask for the light, but it followed you anyway. And that unspoken reality created an invisible wall between you, brick by brick, moment by moment. What she didn't understand was that being chosen didn't mean you were elevated above her. It meant you were entrusted for her. That your calling wasn't competition, it was covering. That your glow wasn't judgment, it was guidance. But prophetic insight without healing turns into bitterness. And so the very part of her that once admired your presence began to avoid it. Not because you changed, but because she couldn't keep pretending she hadn't known all along that you were different. She felt the shift long before you did, long before your voice matured or your confidence arrived. She was there in the early chapters when your spirit whispered things you hadn't yet put into words, and for a time she convinced herself it didn't mean anything, that it was just imagination, that you'd grow out of it. But then you didn't. You grew into it. And that's when the ache began. You didn't steal the spotlight, heaven gave it. And what hurts her most is not that you were chosen. It's that she recognized it before you ever did, and still couldn't stop it.
You didn't walk away. Heaven pulled you. You didn't start the distance. God declared it. And now, what once felt like heartbreak is starting to feel like protection, because what you thought was rejection from someone you loved was actually redirection from the one who loves you more. The separation you kept trying to pray away was the same separation God was using to shield your soul, not because your sister is evil, but because your assignment is holy, and holiness cannot be entangled with hearts that still war with your identity. There's a kind of separation that doesn't come from offense. It comes from order, divine order, and heaven will always enforce order when elevation is at stake. This wasn't personal, it was prophetic. The further you stepped into who you really are, the more incompatible her presence became with your atmosphere. Not because of hate, but because of frequency. The vibration of your calling disrupted what she refused to confront in herself, and the only way to preserve your purity was for heaven to create space, even if it hurt. So God began to close doors you didn't understand. Phone calls stopped, conversations dried up, her energy grew colder, and her presence more distant. You thought it was something you said, something you did, but it wasn't. It was what you carried. The oil on your life created a tension her spirit could no longer tolerate, and instead of addressing it, she drifted, slowly, silently, until the bond that once felt unbreakable began to unravel, not by human hands, but by divine command. You kept reaching back, trying to restore what no longer fit, but God blocked it. Not because he wanted her gone forever, but because what he's birthing in you can't survive under constant resistance. Your vision requires clarity. Your obedience requires peace. Your next season requires separation. And while your heart grieved, your spirit started to exhale. Because somewhere deep inside, you knew you couldn't take everyone with you, especially not the ones who refused to see you as more than who you used to be. This isn't exile. This is elevation. This isn't abandonment. This is alignment. Heaven knows how to remove what threatens your focus without needing drama or explanation. Sometimes silence is God's signature, and in this case, his silence was your shield, because had the connection remained, her words would have slowly eroded your confidence. Her subtle jabs would have weakened your authority. Her gaze, filled with tension, would have caused you to question your glow. So God declared, enough. And now, what once felt like a fracture is being revealed as favor. The space between you isn't failure. It's proof that God is positioning you. She didn't leave you. Heaven removed her. Not forever, but for now. Because what's on your life is too sacred to be shared with someone still wrestling with the fact that you were chosen. You were right to feel hurt, right to feel confused, abandoned, even betrayed. What she did, or didn't do, cut deep. Not because she was a stranger, but because she was your sister. The one who knew your heart. The one who was supposed to cheer the loudest. The one who had a front row seat to your struggles, and still chose silence when the victory came. Her absence in your becoming
was a wound you didn't want to name. But here's what heaven is whispering now. You still must forgive her. Not because she apologized, not because she made it right, not because she finally saw your value and came running back with repentance, but because forgiveness is for you. It's the door you walk through to carry your calling without chains. It's the release your heart needs to step into your future without the weight of yesterday's grief. Unforgiveness is subtle. It builds slowly in your spirit like a shadow, and though you've kept moving, part of you is still bleeding from the betrayal. Heaven sees that, and heaven knows your destiny can't coexist with bitterness. She was supposed to protect you. Instead, she competed. She was supposed to lift you. Instead, she watched from a distance while you carried battles alone. But what if her silence wasn't cruelty? What if it was insecurity? What if her distance wasn't rejection, but fear? The truth is, she didn't have the tools to handle your transformation. And though it doesn't excuse the pain, it does explain the distance. And when you can see the wound behind the weapon, you're no longer a victim. You're a vessel. That's what forgiveness does. It frees your spirit to love without needing validation. It silences the echo of disappointment and makes room for God's peace to flow again. Forgiveness doesn't mean you ignore the fracture. It means you stop letting it define your future. It means you bless her, even if she never blesses you back. It means you release her name from the grip of your pain and place it into the hands of a God who understands both of your stories more than you ever will. You may never get the moment you imagined, the apology, the understanding, the embrace, but your healing isn't waiting on her confession. It's waiting on your surrender. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's prophetic maturity. Jesus forgave on the cross while they mocked him. Joseph forgave his brothers after they sold him. David spared Saul even when Saul hunted him. Why? Because chosen ones carry mercy like oil, not to reward betrayal, but to keep their own spirits pure. And now, so do you. You may never forget what she did, but you don't have to carry it anymore. Not into your next season, not into your promise. You still must forgive her, not for her sake, for yours.
She can't look you in the eyes, not because she hates you, but because deep down, she sees herself in them. The version of her that still believes, the little girl who once dreamed boldly, the woman she was supposed to become. And that reflection breaks her, because every time her gaze meets yours, she sees the one who didn't give up, the one who followed God when she froze, the one who stepped into identity while she stayed wrapped in insecurity. And it reminds her of what she abandoned, not out of malice, but out of fear. But here's what even she doesn't know. Your eyes don't just reflect her past. They carry her future. You didn't just survive what she couldn't face. You were preserved to become the very bridge back to her destiny. That's why the tension is so spiritual. That's why her silence feels so loud. Because your eyes don't condemn her. They call her. They carry the mercy she thought she no longer deserved, the hope she buried, the faith she traded for familiarity. And whether she can name it or not, her deliverance is tied to what she sees in you. God didn't give you this glow just for platforms. He gave it for proximity, for the people who watched you rise in silence, for the ones who whispered instead of clapped, for the ones who walked away confused by their own emotions. And your sister, she is one of them, one of the first, one of the ones who saw the anointing and couldn't hold it. But now God is rewriting the story. Because where there was jealousy, He is planting healing. Where there was silence, He is preparing restoration. And He's using you as the vessel. That's why you had to go through what you did. That's why the pain had to cut so deep. So your eyes would carry compassion, not pride. So your presence would remain soft. So when she finally looks again, really looks, she doesn't see judgment. She sees Jesus. She sees grace. She sees the sibling who never stopped loving her.
never closed the door, never spoke against her name. And that love, that unwavering, unshaken, undeserved love, will be the thing that undoes the chain she's worn for years. So don't turn away when she returns. Don't close your heart just because she once closed hers. You weren't just chosen to rise, you were chosen to restore. Your eyes hold something heaven needs her to see. A flicker of redemption, a doorway home. And when the moment comes, and it will come, when her walls finally break and her eyes finally rise to meet yours again, don't flinch, don't blink, just look back with the mercy that made you, because you were always her deliverance.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.